My name's Richard.
Hello, my name is Kris.
And this is a We're Not Wizards special, I think. Hello, Kris.
Hello, Richard. How are you keeping?
I'm very good. I don't think... I feel kind of bad going to have you kind of talking a lot because you've got a little bit of a froggy, croaky throat.
I have indeed.
Which isn't good. But you, as we said off mic even, you can bring the sexiness to We're Not
huskiness,
the huskiness. Now, the title of the show tonight is going to be called Staying In and Planning a Heist with Kris and Tim. And the reason, Tim, you may ask, well, we've asked Tim Fowers, and Tim is responsible for Paperback, he's responsible for Fugitive, he's also responsible for one of Kris's favourite games, which is Burgle Brothers. So good evening, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's a delight to have you on. Now, the reason that we've asked Tim on tonight, as we said that last time we had Kris on, he had enthused, I think, about Burgle Brothers, didn't you, Kris? You love it.
I waxed lyrical over it because it's one of my favourite games, and it's also one of my partner's favourite games as well. It was when I first met her. It was one of the things that introduced her to the hobby was Burgle Brothers, and it is. I keep it in her flat. It is her go-to game. So it's a fantastic. I feel very lucky to be sharing cyberspace, Mr. Fowers.
Well, I'm blushing over here. So
it's like you didn't realise that actually you weren't just stealing plans and money, but you were actually helping to steal hearts as well at the same time.
Indeed.
That's great.
That's just the most cheesiest thing I could add. More parmesan over here, please, waiter. Now, for everybody who's listening for the first time, first of all, thank you for joining us. The reason that we do this is quite simply because we wholeheartedly believe that there are quite simply not enough podcasts out there about board games. And the other reason that we do this is sometimes you get an opportunity to put somebody who likes a game next to somebody who creates a game. And I feel like I'm hosting surprise tonight or something like that. So what we like to do is we normally find out a little bit about the history of how somebody got into the hobby, how they discovered tabletop board games, and you know, have a little look back at the past, have a little kind of peek around in the present, and then have a skedaddle off into the future. So, Tim, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the hobby yourself?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, 2006, I guess, 11 years ago. I was a programmer, and one of my coworkers and I kind of decided, two things happened at once. We decided we kind of wanted to start making some independent video games, and at the same time, we discovered like the hobby board game area, and I think it was through Twilight Imperium, and then Twilight Imperium 3rd edition was coming out, and through that I discovered Puerto Rico, and from there Settlers and Power Grid, and so I kind of decided at that point that I was really amazed by Power Grid and like how elegant it was and what it was doing, but I didn't really see a viable path to making board games, but I really enjoyed video games as well. Mm-hmm. And so then there's kind of a extended adventure where me and my friend went and started making independent video games. We did that for several years. And through that process, I figured out how to design them. And in 2011, I started a job with Amazon Game Studios as a designer. Yeah. And I was there for a few years. And at that point, well, to back up a little bit, towards the end of doing independent video games, we had some extra time, and I worked on a game called Walkstar. And because my my buddy was a programmer. He was busy working on stuff, and I'm like, I got some extra bandwidth, and I came up with Walkstar, and it was really meant to be kind of a video game as a board game. So it was like Diner Dash. All these kind of time management games were really big back then, and I wanted to make a translation of a time management game into like a tabletop experience. And we took it to Protospiel and kind of went through this whole back and forth with different publishers, and so that was going on kind of in the background. I got this job with Amazon, and then I'd been at Amazon for a year or so, and I started just working on side projects with board games again. I kind of started that back up, came up with Paperback, and started to kind of move more seriously towards board games, but I was doing it all on the side, and then Paperback actually was pretty, it was a mild success, but enough to fill my living room full of copies of it and ship them out. And then Burgle came along as there'd been a long beloved history of me trying to design different video games in kind of the heist space. And there was a game that came along called Monaco that kind of let a lot of the air out of my tires. I was like, oh, this is such a good heist. It's doing everything that I wanted to do with a heist game. And I kind of shelved it for a bit. And then kind of all these forces kind of came together for Burgle, and it was like a little bit, I was doing a little bit of a hybrid game design where I was doing an app and a board together. And then I realized that I wanted to do a heist theme, and so I started playing with the heist. I'm like, oh, we'll have the app control the guards. And then when I came up with the guard waypoint system, I'm like, oh, I don't need an app. It can just be a thing. But what's funny is when I was testing kind of these failed versions of my other games, or of these hybrid games, one of the pitches I went to people and said, hey, you come test my game. It's like Ocean's 11, the board game. And people just lit up. They're like, I want to play that game. And the game that I had at the time was not that. It was a bad game. But it was not fun. It was, but the promise of that kind of drove through me into the rest of the process. I realized that is something that people absolutely wanted. Like they wanted this heist experience, and there hasn't been something that had captured it in the right way. The sense of being clever and outwitting the guards and the puzzly elements to it, and the drama of the plot twist of we're going to get caught, something's going to go wrong, and it was an iterative process, and I leaned on a lot of my friends. I learned with my earlier game designs to not try to be as independent and kind of closed off and lone wolf as some designers do. I tried to really just open up and take the best ideas from playtesters and through. A lot of my colleagues at Amazon were fantastic designers, and then it just kind of evolved. It started to get a momentum of its own. And then it just took a whole bunch of testing because it's a roguelike game and there's a lot of moving parts with different tile types, and to try to balance it so the experience is generally challenging but not too easy, not too hard, I had to lock in a lot of those tile types super early, and I kind of had to know what those were so that I could get enough games in that I could confidently say, this is about the difficulty level of the game. So really within 2 weeks, I had probably 90% of the game done, kind of locked in. It was a really kind of quick process, and then just a lot of playing from then on. That's
just 2 weeks. That's absolutely. There's probably real heists that take.
Have more planning than that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a honeymoon phase. When you get into game design, you fall in love with an idea and it has a certain momentum behind it, and you really just have to follow it. And you have to just dive in and just be like, I'm really excited about it, and as often as I can get it on the table and bug my friends to play it again, I did that. And so you kind of just have to follow that momentum. Because I found that some designs, when they take a longer amount of time, it's kind of hard to remember why you were excited about it and remember all the details about it. And so Fugitive was also very fast. Paperback was fast. So most of the ones I have out now were pretty quick in their to get to kind of the last 10% is the last 90%. So, if you look at the prototype, it's very familiar in all those games. Like, it was very close in the first few versions, but then tons and tons of testing and getting the tuning right and whatnot. But it's just kind of how I manage my creative demons. Is you kind of just have to indulge them for a while.
Did you do you continue to play games at the moment? I mean, are you? It's one of these things. Is once you get close to the coalface, where does the balance between it being a hobby and it being a kind of a job that puts bread on the table? So do you still kick back and relax with kind of tabletop and board games at the moment, or is it concentrate on the business?
I kind of have to force myself to. I do try to play some of the newer games. I don't play as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
It's really hard. For a long time, when it was my side, hustle. The situation was, it's like, well, because I've got kids, it's like, well, Dad's going to go to game night to go test this game, and so I gotta leave, and this is important that I need to do this, and so I would go to these game nights, and when I was there, I was on the clock. I'm like, if I'm there, I'm testing, and if I'm not, then I should probably be back with my kids, right? And it's been really hard to walk away from that instinct. So a lot of times, I still go to these game meetups, and there's a lot of great ones. I'm in Utah, here in the U.S., and there's just a whole bunch of, there's Tasty Minstrels here, Mayday Games is here, and then there's a big game group. And it's still hard for me to not be like, hey, I got another prototype, who wants to play? Like, I'm kind of always on the clock. Yeah. And sometimes I just won't bring one of my games so that it's not an option, and just be like, I'm just going to play something and enjoy it. But I've kind of gone through the process of legitimizing my video game hobby and my board game hobby into jobs. So yeah, it changes. It's a different thing, but I still enjoy games. I mean, and it's one of those things where, luckily, I enjoy the process of making a game, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'd love to make games, and it's different. Making games is different than playing games. It's rewarding. It's just, it doesn't always translate. And so when people are excited about getting into it, I'm just like, well, try to make something and see if you really enjoy that part of it. And if you don't, it's okay. It's just, so I got lucky.
Obviously that was it. You just stepped up one day and you were covered in horseshoes and all different types of things, and it was just pure absolute luck. I mean, Kris, I guess Kris is probably a good person to bring in at this point, because he, as you say, he has professed a deep love, and you almost wonder if his partner said it's me or Burgle Brothers. How long the conversation was.
It's a lot.
What is it from the meta side of things, Kris? From the game, from your view, Kris, what is it that you kind of like about Burgle Brothers? And do you have any questions for Tim? Because he's, I don't
really want to put him on the spot too much, but I'm particularly. Very interesting to me, Tim, you saying that when you pitch the game to your friends, saying this is Ocean's 11 in a box, and their eyes lit up. It's really interesting that I actually just typed into Google Heist board game, and Burgle Brothers popped up. I felt there was a real paucity for this kind of genre in board gaming, and I don't know what it is about the concept, the idea of a heist. And one of the things that Burgle Brothers does so well is that it's an event. There's this inherent kind of wonderful theatricality to it that I adore, whether it be the box itself resembling a tower block. And what I love in particular is how that aesthetic is something that runs through your work like a stick of rock, this distinct and very exquisite aesthetic, fugitive being the briefcase. And when I play Burgle Brothers with friends, it is an event. We put on heist music. We've got our characters. We've got this wonderful app online, not the app that you've recently teased, but the one that generates the different
wall builder.
And I think there's this lovely care and attention that I like about Burgle Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is a lot of the smaller details. A lot of these things I learned from independent video games. If you look at like Braid and World of Goo and Fez and like these really well done, well crafted. I mean, I've been striving to be kind of artisan and get all the details right, type of thing, because a lot of it is just trying to create an entire experience, but also just putting all the details in it, because I have to rely entirely on word of mouth. Like, I mean, I realize that you can't really brute force your way into this becoming a popular board game. It's entirely, the proof is in the pudding. It's in, everything that you have is just in the box, and you've got to make that sing for people. So I try to pack a lot of value, so like, oh, I could play this other thing in the future with these other characters, and they can see the potential of it in the future. And then also the experience itself is like very consistent in what we tap into for that genre, both color and font and texture, and try to really dig in. And it's not me. It's just, I mean, I'm just kind of the vision holder. I'm just trying to say, like, like when I first took the concept over to Heiko, he is a German guy, and I'm like, I want to do like the 60s thing, and he pulled these things out of the 60s that I hadn't seen in forever, like the halftone, cover, and doing like the mid-century modern architecture. And he first showed it to me. It's one of those things where like because it's so different, it initially bounces off of you, and you're like, I don't know about that. And then you kind of chew on it, and you're like, man, that, it has a unique look and it has a unique vision. And then now I absolutely love it. Like, and so then my artist Ryan, we had already kind of established this kind of 60s cartoony style, and so it fed into the same era. And then just trying to get down to all the little details and figuring out fun ways to reintegrate pieces of the theme into it. But I mean, the idea is that I learned with Walkstar that a lot of this is, if you get all the details right, it can be a classic. It can be something that lasts a long time. And also I try to really push away from both visually and mechanically from other games. I probably overemphasize innovation. I try to be too different, but my business model lines up that if I'm innovative, it makes it worth finding me. And so I try to I try to be the secret that you tell your friends because they don't know about it. And it's rewarding when they find about this gem. So I want to be the hidden gem. I don't really want to be in a really big box store and whatnot. I'm trying to have more of a direct relationship with with the fans. So.
Well, you're succeeding. I think you are in the sense that it's a really nice feeling for me when I go into, say, a board game shop, or I'm talking to people who are interested in board games. And once you've gone past the thing of, okay, you played this, and this, the usuals, I mention Burgle Brothers, I explain it. Oh my word, I've not heard it. I want to play this game straight away. I can see them. Richard, you did this in the last conversation we had. Actually, you start Googling it, and then you find there's this kind of network of people that you meet who've played the games. Oh yes, and they look at you. I'm so glad I found someone else who just gets how great this is. The guy in my board game cafe across the road, him and his partner who run the cafe, they love Burgle Brothers. And it's wonderful to own something, this rare gem that it isn't necessarily a part of somebody's board gaming collection. That not everyone's going to have it. It's lovely to be the person who does have that and to introduce that to someone else. It's lovely to be.
Yeah, so I entirely rely on that word of mouth, and part of me was just waiting. Right, I found that these games, most of my games, like it's actually like 2 years later is when they really start to pick up. And most people just aren't patient enough to wait for that kind of growth. Like what is it? I say that board games are viral because people have to play them with somebody, right? And it's just they're not viral like a Facebook post or something. They're viral in on different time scale. And so the bet that I made with paperback is I'm like, well, there's an audience I want to get to, but I'm going to wait to try to get there. And also, it was an attempt to make a sustainable business because I'm like, I met people that were in the industry, and the margins were so bad in all these different places. I'm like, there has to be a way to make this viable, to sustain, to do this full time. And everything was kind of pointing against that, where they're like, well, you try to just do really big numbers and then you take your little cut. And I'm like, I'm just going to do the slow and steady. And I think in the age of the internet, between Kickstarter really enabling you to have the funds to print the game, and then just the nature of the internet for ideas to spread, and then just warehousing and other things I have in the background have all allowed. So I'm kind of at this, again, lucky where all these things are making it possible, and I'm just going to keep doing it. Now, the pressure on all this is like, people, make a good game, and now I want to try to do something different, and people just kind of want more of the same. And creative, I'm like, are they going to be okay if I make a tactics game? Are they going to be okay if I do something really different? And I think some will, but I think certainly there'll be people that'll be like, can we just have more Burgle Bros? And I'm like,
they want Ocean's 12 and they want Ocean's 13.
Exactly. And so I now realize that I kind of, so that's probably why I've gotten people to help me, is I've got Jeff Beck, and with paperback, I know people wanted more paperback, and I'm just like, I don't know if I've got any fresh ideas. And it's just when you're so close to something for so long. And so I went over to Jeff. I'm just like, you know what? I want to make a paperback expansion, but I need some fresh eyeballs on it. So I handed it over to him, and he knocked it out of the park with hardback. It's a fantastic game, and it'll give people more of that, kind of that feel. And on top of that, we're doing a paperback expansion, because we kind of ended up making it's a whole new game. And so I still wanted to do an extension to paperback. And so there's a lot of back and forth now on what to do with a Burgle expansion. Is it just kind of more tiles and more, kind of events and content, or, we've been talking about doing some kind of a campaign or a legacy thing.
Yeah.
But we want to do it where because there's kind of easy ways to do it, but unless I feel like I have something genuinely interesting to add, I don't want to just kind of phone it in. And I know some people just want more content, and I get that, but for me to be excited about it, I feel like I have to have a new angle, something more to bring to the table. So we're working on Burgle, but we're totally open to if people have some fun ideas. I'm really collaborative. If people, because some of the best, a friend of mine, the whole loot system. What's funny is there wasn't even loot in the game when we finished the Kickstarter, and I promised loot, and I had a whole different concept of what loot was, and he's like, well, what if it's just this stuff that you get out of the safes and it slows you down? And I'm like, that is perfect. And it kind of came together. The problem is I shouldn't have printed the Persian cat. That was a bad idea. But it was just
I was about to mention the Persian cat.
It was so cute and funny that I couldn't resist it. But it was it was the most problematic. Try to fit an explanation on a card for this thing. It was, so it goes.
It's hilarious. My friend Sam, he loves Burgle Brothers. His nickname for Burgle Brothers is "You don't know what you're robbing till you're robbing." And even when you flip open the safe card, you are pulling out a game changer. The rules are changing with each floor. It's fantastic. It's lovely that. I mean, there's tons of replayability with this, which I think keeps bringing it back to the table for me as well. And I completely commend and applaud you for this idea that, going back to what you were saying before, the idea that if something new was coming to Burgle Brothers, it'd be something that, again, it lights that same spark you had when you first had the idea for it. It wouldn't just be putting a fourth floor on the building or adding, I don't know, just additional tiles, really. There's got to be something for you to find that personal engagement, because what you're doing is an incredibly difficult job. I don't own any other games by anyone else who both designs and essentially sells the games as well. I mean, that is a very, very big task. And that's something I really wanted to ask to you, really, is in terms of how you managed to juggle that, really, as the designer and the distributor of your game.
Well, a lot of it is just you got to eat your vegetables. There's a lot of parts of any job that just are you got to just buckle down and do it. And And there are some rewards. Like doing customer service is nice because it's a way that I can like have some direct interaction with, people that have bought it. But I mean, a lot of people, I don't know. There's a lot of I've seen senior designers, people that are older designers, kind of scare people away from self-publishing. They'll be like, "Hey, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to worry about all the shipping and manufacturing stuff, or do you want to design games? So you should just be a designer, And I'm like, well, there's like a handful of designers that can actually live off of pure design. You're Eric Lang and your whatnot. But so for most of us, the options are A, have a day job and design on the side, or B, have a day job and do all the self-publishing the rest of the time. All the publishing, manufacturing, and shipping and whatnot. So it's like, I'll do that instead of a day job. Like it's just, I got to do one of them. And it's fine. I've been trying to just grow conservatively, and there's a lot of automated stuff. When it comes to manufacturing, isn't that scary. I've certainly had some people lead the way for me and put me in contact with manufacturers and whatnot. And then on the shipping end, I've had successes and failures there, but for the most part, it's been relatively smooth. And there isn't perfect solutions because I'm not Amazon. But for the most part, I have warehouses in UK, Germany, Australia, China, and US. And that's all. Ship Naked's actually helped me put all that together. Yeah. And just because I wanted to get the turnaround time and the shipping costs down to those places, if I'm going to sell direct, I have to kind of solve that problem. But I don't know. To me, it's just what you got to do. You got to pay your taxes and you got to ship your games. Like it's just, So
I wanted to ask you a question about just Kickstarter quickly, because you've mentioned it's like 2 years before you're really seeing the kind of the games take off. Do you think there's like a push for Kickstarter to like almost be like a magnesium flare, burn very, very brightly before kind of disappearing for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter's interesting because there's a psychological thing where people overestimate how happy something is going to make them. And that's why they can get behind the vision of a game and they can get excited. But really, they're just buying into the fantasy of that game and the potential of that game. And they just want to help a guy out. They want to help, sponsor this guy to make his dream. But yeah, there's two phases. There's when you kickstart it and then when you deliver. And so for me, like getting people on board with the idea is one thing, but then actually delivering a quality game is the real proof in the pudding. So I'll ship, the big push of like Fugitive went out, and then I would sit there and I'd like watch for BGG reviews and just commentary on like people actually like it. Did I screw something up? And there's kind of like this second phase where you're watching the outcome of the game, and then there's the kind of the slow build at that point where you just kind of let it spread, and people are going to play it with other people, and then eventually different press people will latch onto it, and that'll be kind of a burst of sales. And it's there's an up and down. I was even doing a whole thing where I wouldn't always be in stock because I didn't want to overprint, and so I would kind of like let it run out, and then I'd be out of print for 3 or 4 months, and then I'd be back in. And it turns out that cadence actually helped it be perceived as more valuable. So when it was in stock, people would act on it more. Now I try not to get out of stock anymore. I've printed enough that I'm hopefully not going to be out of stock of it on a game in the near future, but it might happen. So I don't know. There's just kind of a model there, but at the same time, I don't worry too much about being like out of stock. I'm just like, well, if it's valuable, it's one of those things where I don't feel like if I make a unique thing, I don't have as much like competition, right? I'm not competing for shelf space. I'm not competing for these other things. It's like if people have to wait a couple months to get something that's different, then they're okay waiting. Like it's just because there's not an easy substitute for it.
Yeah, well, I think Kickstarter is kind of help that. I mean, if you're a board gamer and somebody says you're not getting a game for 2 months, and you'd be like, well, that's 6 months quicker than some Kickstarters. So, and at least you're not asking me to kind of pay everything up front.
Yeah. No, Kickstarter is really a magic bullet. Like, you get to immediately you get to test an idea. You get to market test an idea for really not a lot of overhead. So even a failed Kickstarter, you got to find out if, it was a good idea in the first place without losing a lot. Before, you'd have to take the risk of printing do a massive print run of a game, and then you have a garage full of shame for the next 5 years of extra copies of the game that didn't sell. But now it's just like, well, you can gauge exactly who likes this, you can connect, you can build a community around it. And then the second Kickstarter is usually where you start to get a really kind of a big expansion. I've seen a lot of people on their second Kickstarter, now that people know that you can deliver and they know that you can trust you and they like what you did before, the second one is really where you see the growth. Just because of the kind of reputation economy of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but also at the same time, I've also seen successful Kickstarters that haven't been able to reprint because they've not estimated the costs properly and ended up almost like a disadvantage. I mean, Isaac Childress, when he did Gloomhaven, and everyone's like saying, man, reprint this game, and he's like, I'd love to, but I don't have the capital to do it. It's sold out, and you're just like, and then when he did do it again, he's like, this is the thing, it's like the Burning Bright thing. There'll be a lot of people that will own Kickstarters that will never ever hit a retail kind of shelf because they've done their copies, they've fulfilled their 2,000 or 3,000 Kickstarter, and you might see it later on in a board game sale, and it'll be second hand maybe. But I think it's a lot of the time you maybe not see it in retail unless it's like a CMON, a Cool Mini or Not game. But I think that's the next phase. I think a Kickstarter is burning bright and then keeping it going and having the tail that you seem to have. Which
Yeah, I mean, I've had friends that haven't had the ongoing kind of growth, and I don't know. For me, it's less. I always kind of, for a long time, I would always treat each print run like it's the last one. I was just like, well, I don't want to print too many. Let's do a conservative number. So I'd go from like a couple, 2,000 to 3,000 was my second print run, and then I think I maybe went to 5,000, and then I finally went to 10,000. With paperback, I think. So I kind of, each game, I because you don't know when it's going to taper off. I've tried to like at least be conservative, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to live in a world where everyone's kind of direct sales and all the people love board games. They go there and buy them from the people that they like, and it's just kind of this, farmer's market of board games. It's like I'd love to see that more. But I realize it doesn't work for everybody. Like, if you need a competitive game that needs like a tournament scene, well, you probably need to work with stores, which means you probably need to work through distribution and kind of through those channels. I mean, I'm fortunate that that young couples or just connected couples tend to really like what I make. They tend to be online, and so. I got lucky that's who, the people that have found me direct sales can work for. So again, I can no longer like recommend, everyone jump off the cliff and do exactly what I'm doing. No. But at the same time, I would like to encourage other people. So I've been trying to, help direct to other projects and help try to, raise the ocean. So, raise the sea lifts all boats, whatever that metaphor is.
I don't know. I have no idea. Kris, metaphors.
Oh my gosh!
Quick, save us.
Raise the sea, or
something like that.
Like Moses
chucking a life raft.
Push the sea apart.
Let's just blue sky think on this.
So for now, it's just like I'm just gonna keep trucking, and just see if people like the new stuff, and at the same time, just not trying to put stuff out to put stuff out. Like, make sure that I have I'm proud of what I'm putting out, and I have to really be okay playing it for 500 more times, because I'm going to be at conventions playing it and whatnot. So I have to really like the game itself before I commit to it.
You don't want somebody coming up to you and saying, "Well, can you show me how Fugitive works?" You don't want to play Catan, do you? By any chance, instead. But I see that Jamie Stegmaier, his latest effort, Charterstone, that's going to be going direct to retail as opposed to Kickstarter. So, I mean, maybe this is the start of more people kind of doing the direct sales type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of these guys that they feel like they're kind of graduating from Kickstarter, but then you see like TMG, swore it off, and now they're back. They're going to do next week. They're going to do Crusaders. So I would not be surprised if we see Jamie Stegmaier back on a Kickstarter. But who knows, right? I'm gonna stick with it. It's like, if I need to change my business model, I'm fine doing it. But until I get really diminishing returns with it, I don't think I'll pivot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you have kind of like another kind of 20 ideas that are sitting in a folder somewhere that you're wanting to put out next, or have you kind of put the brakes on stuff? What's...
I try not to brainstorm too much, because you find that you fall in love with the new idea, and then working on the old idea gets harder. So, but I still do. I truth be told, I think I have 10 active projects right now, in some stage. I've got 2 Jeffs that work with me, Jeff Beck and Jeff Krause. Yeah. And one's helping me with board games, one's helping me with apps. A lot of the apps being translations of board games, but also some new stuff. I've been dabbling in a little bit of VR. And these are all different speeds, and sometimes they're with different partners on different things, but then they're going to kind of bear fruit at different times. I try to have the long game now, where it's just be patient and work on things in the right time. Like right now, I'm spinning up for a Kickstarter for Now Boarding, which is a real-time cooperative game, which is pick up and deliver on crack. It's you're delivering a whole bunch of passengers in relatively few amount of rounds, and it's possible. But you have to kind of think really tactically and work together and whatnot. And it's actually one of my longer projects. I've wrestled with this for several years, and it actually was going to be out last year, and then the new Fugitive came along, and that came around really quickly, and I'm like, I'll do Now Boarding later. So Now Boarding, I'm really happy with where it's out, and I'm going to get it out. Hopefully later this summer, I'll have a Kickstarter going, and I'm also just trying to do things a little bit faster now that I've got help. Trying to do more than one Kickstarter a year. But then beyond that, we've got some fun stuff cooking. Like I've got a tactics game or two that I'm working on, and I have and then Burgle stuff. I don't know. I try not to look more than a couple months in the future, just so that I can kind of go with what's bearing fruit at the time, and if an idea is really clicking, and if I get stuck on a design, I kind of just back burner it and let it simmer until maybe later on I come up with a mechanic that fits with it, and sometimes I'll pull it out with friends, and a friend will be like, "Oh, why don't you do it this way?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I totally didn't think of that." So.
What's going back to Now Boarding? Is it a card game? Is it worker placement? How does it work?
Everyone, I can give you the quick rundown because
that'd be good. I'm
going to be putting together a video for it here pretty quickly. Basically, everyone has a little plane, and it has so many seats, and has so much speed, and every round, more passengers are spawning in different cities, and they want to go to other cities, and the twist of the whole thing is. You start a timer, and everyone takes their turn at the same time. And so everyone is moving their plane around and picking up and dropping off passengers in different airports. And if you get to their destination, the passenger turns into money. And so then between rounds, when it's not timed, you can buy more seats and you can make your plane faster and you can, and then there's kind of some specialization where certain players only have access to certain routes. So everyone's kind of got their shortcuts on the map. And so you have to coordinate. You're like, oh, you stay over there and you bring the passenger here and drop him off and I'll pick him up. And sometimes you can even pull that off in a single turn where you're like, okay, hurry, in the first 10 seconds, you do your move and drop off the guy here and then I'll pick him up and I'll take him the rest of the way in all in the same turn, right? And that's really the core of it. It's a really kind of a simple game. It's just where the passengers are going and the different ways to kind of triage, because the passengers are getting angry as they wait, and if they get too angry, then you can lose if you get too many complaints. But a lot of it is just the different ways of solving the problem of okay, no, don't worry about that guy. Worry about this guy. I'll get him later. and you're doing this whole triage of customer of these passengers, and that's kind of the core of it. Is it creates kind of a dynamic, crunchy knot to unravel, and it's working. And most of it was just trying to figure out how to get a good 2-player experience, and so right now it's 2 to 5.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things I didn't even know this could exist digitally. It's such the real time is such a big part of it that I don't know if we would do a translation of it, but we'll see. As I look at my programmer, and he's looking at me with
It's just what are you telling these guys now? This better not be something that's going out in public. You better not be committing me to actually making another game. I think, Kris, I think Peter might like that game. That sounds.
I think you like that.
I think it's potentially a Peter game.
And also my partner again, who works for customer support for an airline.
Oh boy!
So yeah, she's gonna be thrilled to bits when I tell her you're working on this as well.
So it's actually based on the first video game I made, which is called Nowboarding. If you go to nowboarding.us, you can go try the digital version. And so for a long time, I've been trying to figure out a way to kind of translate that back into a physical game, and I think we finally got there. So that's we're kind of all systems are go. We're getting that ready for Kickstarter, and hope people like it.
Do you have have you decided on things like prices and stuff like that for the game? Is it going to be in?
No, I haven't done quotes yet. I've just barely kind of nailed down the components. So there'll be a lot of that in the next month or so. I'm going to be doing a lot of quotes and getting the video ready and answering all those questions.
Fantastic. Not looking for an exclusive. But obviously now you know there's been there was a delightful announcement of Burgle Brothers going digital, which is surprise. I mean, was that when you first got that working, when you were playing it, did it get the excitement up again for the original game? Or was it brilliant to actually see something kind of live and working?
Well, it was. The funny story there is Jeff approached me a year ago as just a fan of the game. He's like, "Hey, I made this digital version so I could play with my friends, and I could bring him on if you want to." He's over here.
Is he?
He's waving me away. All right. So he came to me. He's like, "Hey, I made this digital version so I could play with my friends." I'm like, "That's cool. How about we make it an app?" And
awesome.
It's been a year because it turns out that each game you kind of have to fiddle with the interface. And Burgle is not an easy one. There's a lot of different ways to interact with it. And we had to try and throw away several different UIs. This happened with Paperback as well. He's currently fiddling with the Fugitive AI or with the Fugitive interface right now. And we kind of have to fiddle with it until we feel like there's something that is understandable and easy to use, and it's not just like you can just cut and paste a board game digitally. You have to play to what the player needs to know and when they need to know it, and and how to teach them. Like Burgle was very functional, but then we're like, crap, we got to get a tutorial for people that have never played it.
Yeah.
And I'm still not totally confident that we can do that really well, but we have like a help system that kind of leads them through their first game, and we'll see how that does. So right now we're just testing that out, trying to get in front of people that have never played, and just seeing if they have any idea what's going on in the game.
And Tim, would that be multiplayers in online, or would that be a pass and play kind of?
We decided with so far I'm trying to approach all my games as a hot seat / AI player game first, and then build into online. Starting with online is problematic. And so if there's demand, so we're going to go ahead and launch, just like Paperback, we're going to launch hot seat, and single player. And then if there's demand for async, we'll do it. I think a lot of the co-ops have not done async. It's more competitive games people like async for. But again, listen to the audience. So
cool.
Well, it looks fantastic. The screenshot looks brilliant. Because it must be really tricky to kind of plot the guard's movement as well as the actual player movement as well. But that looks really nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, I think Richard's going to try it. I don't know if you can, but I think he's already actually got a build of it.
Yeah, I kind of, because you were late today, Kris.
Oh no!
Tim kind of said I'll send you the link, and I had to calm Tim down. I mean, Tim was, he's calm now, but it took 10 minutes to calm him down because he was like, "I'm going." If he can't turn up for the show on time.
Oh no.
And then he sent, if you look in the Skype messages now, you'll see there's 2 messages that have been deleted. And that was...
Yes, I saw that, yeah. That was it, my window.
That was it. I'm sorry.
You live and you learn.
It's okay. Tim, if you just breathe again, I can hear him, the rage rising over the
Yeah, just...
the red mist has descended.
Yeah.
He's going to end up the angry one in the kind of the Heist movie, which would be good. What might be good though is you've thrown about a couple of names of some other games that you've done. Do you want to maybe just spend a couple of minutes, talking a little bit about Paperback, talking a little bit about Fugitive, because I think people, they're going to check Burgle Brothers, and people will probably know Burgle Brothers anyway, but do you want to just, give us a little bit of a background on those as well?
Oh, sure.
The art style is phenomenal. I'm a bit of a drawer, but I'm just going to hang up my pens because the stuff in that I like the clean lines. I like the crispness. I love the colours. I love the style. It's it's a nice little game. But for anybody else that hasn't heard of your other work or sampled your other work, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yeah. So the elevator pitch for each of those. So Paperback is Scrabble Dominion, where you write romance novels. And usually it takes people to get those 3 things in their head at the same time. It usually puts a smile on their face out of just pure confusion. But that was kind of my... I mean, I did... Walkstar is out of print. We're looking at maybe doing something with it, but nothing formal yet. But Paperback, it's very much structured around Dominion, and but it has these twists where there's like a common vowel everyone can use, and there's double letter cards, and you're working towards these victory cards similar to Dominion, but they're also wilds, and so they don't jam up your deck in the same way. And people really enjoyed it. It turned out to be a really accessible word game and a really accessible deck builder, and really kind of bridged the gap into kind of a wider audience beyond kind of the gamer, group. And then Fugitive was my game last year. It is a cat and mouse game of deduction. So one person is the fugitive; he's trying to get out of town, and the marshal is trying to hunt him down and catch him before he gets out of town. And it's a catch me if you can as a board game. And it's just uses a set of, you can actually play it with just any numbered cards, like 6 Nimit, and there's some other games that you can just, and I wanted to make something really clean because I really like games like No Thanks, or The Game. Those are some of the inspirations where it's just like, here's just numbered cards, but can you make a fun mechanic around those? And But then we just kind of went overboard with Fugitive, and we decided, well, since we know that he's starting at 0 and he's going to 42 as his exit, how about we tell a story? And so we built a storyboard. It's basically like a graphic novel across the 42 cards, which was total overkill. But again, I'm doing the artisan thing. I'm trying to make it be a kind of a rewarding, unique experience, and really happy how it turned out. So Fugitive is just 2-player, but a lot of people like to play in teams, especially on the martial side where you're trying to deduce. And then we just finished the Kickstarter for Hardback, which is a new twist on the kind of Scrabble deck builder equation. It now is more like a Scrabble Star Realms, but it has its own thing going on with this whole push your luck system, where in any other deck builder, more cards is always better, right? You always, if you've got plus cards, it's always good in a deck builder. Well, in this one, you can get more cards, but those new cards, like if you use an ink and you say, I'm going to push my luck, and you flip over another card and you put the ink on it, well, now you have to use that letter that you drew. And you can be like, okay, I can work with that. And then you can decide to do it again. Like, okay, and you draw another card. and maybe it's now like a Q or something. And you just, sometimes you get to a point you can't even make a word. But it really puts this individual tension around each turn, and we really like what that added to the whole kind of deck building, and we're excited about it. So we're finishing up the files for that. It's going to go to print, and it's going to be shipping in October, along with a paperback expansion. No, it's not standalone, but it's what are we up to? 105 cards. It was going to be 80, and now it's not. We kept adding stuff. So and. It's
just
but we're
one
really
more vote.
we're really happy about it because it basically helped us define how are the two games different, like what can we do better that is uniquely paperback versus hardback, and we just had some stuff in the last couple of weeks that were like, this is exciting. The tease is we've made an alternate set of starting wilds. So now those 5 wilds you start with are a lot more interesting in paperback. So those are kind of the active things. Burgle, and then the Burgle app is super close. We're just trying to get it approved by Apple and see if we can maybe get featured and get it out. And then paperback app is getting async very, very shortly. Oh, right. And that is a lot of fun to play async. So that's all the stuff.
Yeah. Is that going to be your plan kind of going forward? Is it kind of like if you're going to be putting more stuff out there, there's also going to be the kind of the app side of things to go along it?
As long as it makes sense, and I mean, like some games won't translate, or if it just turns out that it ends up not being worth the time we put into it, then we'd probably back off. But we'll see. For now, that's the plan.
Okay. And you mentioned Star Realms. Have you Have you played Star Realms?
Oh, me? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah. It's great stuff. I mean, I played a ton of Ascension digitally, and so hardback follows more of that vein of like, here's some different color. Like, if you can get these different color matching like combos. Like if you get another yellow, then the yellows will do extra things. And it kind of follows that equation. It's more like, I want to say modern deck builder, because like if you say Dominion is the classic deck builder, so that's kind of the paperback and hardback differentiator.
No, I got introduced to Star Realms by Kris and Sam and Peter quite recently through the Staying In podcast, and I've probably been playing each of them at least once over the last kind of week now. And following up, Sam did kind of kick me to the wall. So I like the idea of being able to play a board game and then also almost learn more about the board game and the meta when I'm playing it through the app as well. It's the attractiveness of having a Burgle Brothers I guess having the Burgle Brothers app it'll help me to learn probably some of the intricacies of the meta of the game that I could maybe take into the real game when I'm playing someone else as well. So that's kind of very exciting to me.
Yeah, there's a poker element of like, okay, I know where the guard has gone and where he hasn't, and I know what the events are, and I kind of know what the loot are, and yeah. So you kind of know, as they say, know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I know that song.
It smacks also a lot of Metal Gear Solid. That's what really, really appealed to me as well. There's a kind of a stealth action genre, but unlike other hidden movement games, for example, the hidden movement is entirely done by the actual game itself, as opposed to another player around the table, which I think is just delicious, really.
Oh.
Tim, you talked about it very briefly at the beginning, but is there a possibility of a merging of the two? Because there are obviously lots of games out there which have an app accompanying them. I could easily envisage, say, I think you put it up on the Board Game Geek. I think it was just somebody said, "Oh, I'd love there to be like a legacy version of this game." And I could easily imagine like taking the original Burgle Brothers as it is and adding some kind of an app campaign accompanying that.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm kidding. We're actually working on that.
Okay, all right.
No, we have the concept of a companion app, and we have some fun ways. But we're not going to promise anything yet. I don't want to tell it.
No. I completely understand that, but I think there's this lovely wry kind of tongue-in-cheek nature to Burgle Brothers, and it comes from Susfetti, but it's also just from the mechanics. There's this kind of wink and nod, and I think there's something quite inherently lovely and playful, and I can easily see that being kind of emboldened by the inclusion of an app.
Yeah. So we have some things we've done, some things we're trying, and we're certainly open to more ideas. We've been looking at and also just how people react to it. If it's just like, because some people really don't like the concept of something being dependent on an app. So we've discussed it being having expansion being separate from an app, or optional in the app, or required in the app. So we will see.
I've seen it expand the game though, because I know that Descent introduced a companion app, and it allowed, basically, rather than somebody having to play the Dungeon Lord, you could both play the adventurers instead, and the app helped the game run itself. And I guess, would it allow you to? With Burgle Brothers, I guess, would you be able to tinker by adding kind of additional stuff through the app to see how it works and seeing how it's kind of taken? And then good ideas, you can maybe it helps you to maybe plan an expansion for the actual physical game.
Yeah. There's certainly for some of the tile types and whatnot. It may be easier to test digitally than physically. Now that we have the framework. So we'll see what fits there, and also just what can the app do to save you time? What can the app do that kind of lets you go beyond kind of the normal layouts? Because if you think about it, the guards are kind of locked into relatively standard patrol patterns, whereas digitally you could kind of have any shape of a floor as long as you've got something to tell you where the guard's going to go next. So we will see. I want to I want to make sure I'm bringing something new to it and that we get it right. But that's the space that we're fiddling with.
And kind of, I guess, on final kind of thoughts, you mentioned obviously you've got kids. The games that you're making, do you think about? Do you play games with them? Do they play things like Fugitive? Do they play Burgle Brothers with you? Do they now boarding, things like that? Are you consciously?
They are getting old enough now that they can. I mean, a lot of my stuff was a little old for them, but they're at the age now where they are learning the games. I've played Burgle with them. I did play an early Fugitive with them. It bounced off them a little bit, but they're certainly getting there, and they are coming to Essen with me. So I'm taking the family to Essen, and hopefully they help. I don't know. They might just disappear because they're such con rats. They end up demoing at other people's booths.
Oh,
they'll go find some other game that they like, and they'll hang out there all day, and they'll pull people in and they'll demo. And so they've got the genes for it, but Dad's games just aren't as exciting as whatever this other game is.
That's just so true, isn't it? I mean, I broke out Mice and Mystics, which is Plaid Hat Games, a little kind of mice miniature, like a Hero Quest, if you remember Hero Quest. But I played it with my 4-year-old over the weekend there, and house ruled it into the ground, obviously, to make it an enjoyable experience. But he completely loves it, and now looks on games like Frustration and 4 in a Row with complete disdain, which is always.
You've ruined him.
I've not, because look, I've got an entire shelf which is full of these bad boys, so we're just ready to move him up. I shown him Space Hulk, the 2014 edition or something, and just shown him, and his mind was blown. It was like
that is naturally the next step from Mice and Mystics.
You have to step up. I mean, it's like, what's that? Darling, that is a Tyranid. That's not a Tyranid, that's a Gene Stealer. Am I not allowed to touch it? No, you're not allowed to touch it. Oh, look, there's a skeleton on a throne. Yes, there is a skeleton on the throne. But I was reminded of actually how thick the card stock is on the board game kind of components on it. It was ridiculous. But no, I got 2 older kids, and the first game that they played, the first board game that they played was Pandemic.
Nice.
Well, you've got to let them learn about their own mortality.
On a global scale.
You should just retheme it as Candyland or something. Just
something like that.
Pandemic Candyland edition.
Well, I heard there
was
little
jelly cubes.
Yeah, there was some. Yeah, and you can actually eat the jelly cubes instead. And he's like, oh no, he's just caught smallpox. It's strawberry flavoured though, yummy. But there was that. Was there not that guy that took a game of Scythe and kind of adapted it with My Little Pony?
Oh, I think I heard. I need to look that up.
That's what he did, and
that's reskinning to a new level, isn't it?
That's sticking a harness on it and giving it a carrot. That's what that is. So, yeah, this guy. I think his daughter was looking on the table and kind of went, "What's this, Daddy?" And why can't I have a game? And I think he repurposed it using kind of like My Little Pony pieces, and he's all over kind of Reddit, which would be kind of good fun. That's the thing, is there's lots of kids games which are games designed specifically for kids, but then there's lots of games that I have played with my kids that aren't strictly, you wouldn't say, for kids. I mean, we've played Codenames is a good one that we play all the time, which is always good.
Team and co-op lets you gives you a lot of leeway to tune, handicap, or teamwork your way to a good time for the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This has been a lot of fun, Tim. I'm really, really pleased that you've come on. I mean, if anyone that's listening tonight, if they want to find out where they can find you on the interweb nets, where do you exist? Where can people find you?
Fowers.games has made it pretty easy for them to find my games, and just so you know, for us Americans, I think Tycho said this. The Scottish accent is like ice cream for your ears. we just love it. So it's been a pleasure.
No, it's okay. Kris will obviously be delighted with that.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, my accent gets cast as the villains in lots of films, so it's kind of undercut it slightly.
You've got the voice for it. Do you know what I mean? You could say you could do the voice. It was a time of peace. It was a time of war. You know what I mean? 4 friends got together to heist on a building. Will they overcome security? You could do that whole thing. In fact, you could, if Tim's looking for a voiceover artist for the Now Boarding video, I'm sure that,
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I'm totally available, Tim. I mean, I'll have to ensure that my throat is as badly damaged as it is now to ensure that quality is retained.
It's method acting. It's part of the...
Indeed, in the zone.
Completely. Scream into a pillow.
Richard's probably going to put this for a filter in post. Just to polish things. Or just redub me entirely.
I'm just going to slow the whole thing down. So it sounds like
just put James Earl Jones in there.
This is CNN.
I just have him going at the end going, no! Do you exist on Twitter and Facebook? We can find you that way as well, can't we? I believe.
Yeah, at T Fowers is my Twitter. And
okay.
Yeah. I have Fowers Games on Facebook.
Oh, cool.
So
okay.
there's
yeah.
Those, I think it covers the bases. I technically have an Instagram, but I don't really do anything. So
I'm still not sure how Instagram works. I know there's photos, but I don't know what you do with it.
Yeah, I'm figuring it out.
I kind of post up stuff, and then people like it, and then people follow me because I use hashtags like board games, and then people like stuff, and I still have no idea what's going on, Kris.
Yes, Richard.
Again, for you, thank you for coming on. It's been a delight.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much again for Burgle Brothers and for all the wonderful games you make. And I am waiting with bated breath for your next.
Well, thank you, and feel free to you get a brilliant idea, send it my way.
I will do indeed. Thank you very much.
And you can find Kris on Staying In podcast. Which was at Staying In Pod on Twitter, and correct, you're on Staying In. Is it stayingin.podbean.com?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're also on. Are you on Facebook yet? I do not know.
Yes. Oh, yes, we are on Facebook.
There you go.
Yes, we're on Facebook. We're on Mixcloud. We're on the whole shebang.
Stitcher and Acast and YouTube, and you've also got your nice little selection on Board Game Geek as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a double section in the show notes. We shall have all of Tim's wonderful things, and then we shall have all of Kris's things. So we shall have show notes so that we have notes to show.
In fact, we actually talked about Burgle Brothers in our very, very first episode.
So there you go. Yeah, if you haven't checked out Staying In, imagine We're Not Wizards, but with more people in it and generally more polished and professional and fun and laughy. It's a good.
But unfortunately, less Scottish.
Well, I can always. You could do the entire next show with Scottish accents because that would be interesting to see. No, don't do that. Don't do that. If you want to keep an eye on what we are up to, you just go to Google, and if you search for We're Not Wizards, we're Twitter, We're Not Wizards, Facebook is We're Not Wizards, Instagram is We're Not Wizards, YouTube, you can find us if you search for We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts. If you search for We're Not Wizards, you will find us there. If you have enjoyed what you've been hearing tonight, thank you very much for doing so. If you like us very, very much, would you consider leaving a review? Now, as we say, don't give us a 10 because that'll make us big-headed, and don't leave us a 1 because that will make us cry. Just leave us something in the middle like a 5 because that's average, and we are decidedly average. But the people that have not been average tonight that have been wonderful is, first of all, the amazing, the fantastic Mr. Kris Darby from the Staying In podcast. Thank you, Kris, for coming on.
Thank you again. And
the rather just fascinating gentleman that is Tim Fowers. So thank you, Tim, for coming on as well.
Well, you're welcome.
Now, there's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, gentlemen?
Not really.
I don't feel like a wizard with this voice, to be honest. This isn't an Ian McKellen-esque.
It's close.
Gandalf voice.
You could do it. You could. I bet you could. Is it secret?
That would.
Is it secret?
I can't do it.
Go on.
I
You can.
We're not wizards. I'm just not a wizard.
There you go. That's fantastic. And the second thing to do is to say goodbye. So it's goodbye from Mr. Kris Darby.
Goodbye.
It is a goodbye and 1,000 thanks to the wonderful Mr. Tim Fowers.
We will see you later.
Brilliant. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe. Roll sixes. If you're sitting in the airport lounge round about the end of the summer, there's a possibility that very soon you'll be now boarding. But until the next, I'm sticking with that. It's not getting cut. But until the next time, goodbye.